What is going on, everyone? My name is Reshima. Welcome back to another Transformers Earth Wars guide, and today we're going to be covering the bot known as Pipes. If you are new to this channel, by the way, and you like this kind of content, please consider hitting that like button, hitting that subscribe button, become part of the reshiminesquad. I would like to give a special shout out to Sayan 69 for the setups and CF Tactics for the thumbnail. Go ahead and check out his channel. His channel link will be in the description down below. I would urge you to subscribe. He's an amazing content creator. But anyhow, let's talk about Pipes. What should you know about Pipes? He is amazing and probably one of the best warriors out there. But why, you may ask? Well, he's a warrior bot, right? But his ability, Corrosive Charge, is so amazing because it has a 3+1 cost. So that means you can use him multiple times per battle, you know, and it's just not a waste of time at all, because you're going to be able to regain those ability points based off his attack. But what does Corrosive Charge do? Gain 80% health and an 80% absorption shield based on your max health for 11.4 seconds. Then rush into combat, covering buildings in acid that deals approximately 2,333 acid damage, causing 20% attack speed reduction over 11.4 seconds, taunts defenses. That's pretty good, but you may be asking, what setups should I be using with Pipes? Well, let's talk about it. So the setups for Pipes as follow as cores that you can use with him, following Liege, Maximo, Megatronus, Nexus, and Alpha Trion. For combats, he only has two combats that are very worthy to use, which is Bashbreaker and Buzzstrike. But with all that further ado, let's dive into the first setup. Alright, so for the first setup for Pipes, you have the following core of Liege Maximo. What does it do? After using their ability, nearby outpost bots are hacked for 11.5 seconds. You cannot be hacked. And then the combat is Bashbreaker. Every 10 seconds, launch 3 acid projectiles in a cone, dealing 50% of your bot's DPS to enemies and negating healing for 5 seconds. Increases bot damage by 18%. This will all make sense in the gameplay that you're about to see, so enjoy, guys.
Now, reap the whirlwind! is over. Finished. Now, reap the whirlwind! Well done. Now, reap the whirlwind! Freedom is the right of all sentient beings.
Alright, so for the second setup, we're switching combats. We have Liege Maximo, once again, which you already know what it does, but Buzzstrike, what does Buzzstrike do? Increases DPS by 18%. For every 6 seconds, summon a giant blade that is swung down and deals 2 times the amount of the bot's DPS to targets that are hit by it. Bot also receives hack immunity. Pretty powerful combo, but I think you'll see it better in the gameplay. So enjoy, guys.
Now, reap the whirlwind! Freedom is the right of all sentient beings. Now, reap the whirlwind! Well done. reap the whirlwind! Freedom is the right of all sentient beings.
So we're moving on to the second core, which is Megatronus. What does Megatronus do? Flames surround you, dealing 39% of your damage every second to targets in melee range. That means really close to you. The combat is Bashbreaker. What does Bashbreaker do? Every 10 seconds, launch 3 acid projectiles in a cone, dealing 50% of the bot's DPS to enemies and negating healing for 5 seconds. Increases bot damage by 18%. And it's amazing to me that Pipes does not burn up during the battle, but you're about to see how great Megatronus is. Enjoy, guys.
Now, reap the whirlwind! the whirlwind! Freedom is the right of all sentient beings. Now, reap the whirlwind! Freedom is the right of all sentient beings.
We are moving on to one of the best setups for pipes recommended by a lot of people if you end up getting a 5-star pipes or 5-star headstrong. His counter. What is it? Well, it is Megatronus and Buzzstrike. What does Buzzstrike do? Increases DPS by 18% every 6 seconds. You summon a giant blade that is swung down and deals 2 times the amount of damage of the bot's DPS to targets hit by it. Bot also receives hack immunity. And I think you'll see in the gameplay why this happens to be the best setup for him. So enjoy, guys.
Now, reap the whirlwind! Freedom is the right of all sentient beings. Now, reap the whirlwind! Freedom is the right of all sentient beings. Now, Reap the whirlwind! Freedom is the right of all sentient beings.
Well, that will do it for the Pipes Guide tonight. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it and learned something about this amazing warrior. But you may be asking yourself, why didn't you show Alpha Trion or Nexus? Well, quite frankly, Liege, Maximo, and Megatronus fit Pipes way better than those two cores. However, if you want to experiment, go right ahead. I am actually kind of curious about those setups as well. But without further ado, I want to thank CF Tactics for designing a thumbnail and also providing these two lovely data sheets. I will be posting them in the community tab after this video is up, and also the Rook ones, the Rook and Blot one too, because I forgot to do that last time. But without further ado, if you have a bot that you want me to cover, please leave it in the comment section below. I'll be watching very carefully. But have a great day, night, evening, whenever you're watching this video. I'll see you guys later, alligators. Peace!